Okay, the anti-blackness in the black community is off the Richter scales. And we're going to address a Miss Mohogany Pink in her videos about the false promise of black love. And let's go through a couple of numbers so that we can put these things into context and anchor this conversation. 72% of mothers in America work. For mothers with school-age children, that number is 76%. So 72% of mothers work. And for those of them with school-age children, that's 76% of mothers work. Okay? 8% of Americans are millionaires. And that's not a million liquid. That's not if you go into their bank account, they'll have a cool $1 million. That's all their assets. So 8% of Americans have worth of $1 million or more. Let's keep on going. The top 1% of Americans, according to a leaked Citibank memo, the top 1% of Americans have 90 to 95% of the financial wealth, right? And the reason why this matters is because Miss Mohogany Pink was comparing black men to essentially the top 1% of American men, like Jeff Bezos. Let's keep going. Half of Americans make $31,000 a year or less. Half of American women, it's $25,000 a year or less. Half of American men, it's $38,000 a year or less. What we know is anywhere between a third to 40% of Americans make $20,000 a year or less. The median household income in America is about $67,000 a year. If we round it up to $70,000 a year, we have two people making $35,000. And in that environment, Miss Mohogany Pink thinks it's okay to insult, belittle, demean black men for not being industrious enough, for not having enough businesses, for not being wealthy enough, for not being the adequate providers. And to anchor much of this conversation, let's go through this. 40% of Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency. 60% of Americans cannot afford an $1,000 emergency. 80% of Americans 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 26% of Americans are married if they're poor. So 26% of poor Americans are married. 39% of middle class Americans and 56% of upper middle class and above Americans are married. It's in this environment where Miss Mohogany Pink thinks she can insult, belittle, demean black men. Entrepreneurship in America was at a 40-year low pre-COVID. So the reason was not COVID. COVID is not the reason why entrepreneurship was at a 40-year low. Marriage in America is at a 150-year low. Pre-COVID also, once again, so COVID-19 is not the reason for that either. Crime in America was on the decline for the past 30 years pre-COVID, including in your major black cities. All of these numbers matter because Miss Mohogany Pink was using these type of talking points to berate black men, to belittle black men, to demean black men, and to compare black men to the top 1% of Americans, such as Jeff Bezos, the union-busting Jeff Bezos, the Jeff Bezos that's taking spaceships into outer space, into space better yet, while he has his workers peeing in bottles so that they can make sure to make the delivery on time and not be fired. And those are the people that Miss Mohogany Pink thinks it's okay to compare black men to in this environment post-COVID. You would have thought that seeing the precarity of the masses of Americans' lives, that many of this rhetoric would have died down because we would have saw the reality of people's lives. But no, Miss Mohogany Pink seems to think that the masses of non-black people, specifically white people, are living the Real Housewives of Orange County and not living more of a life of Roseanne or the Connors or Married with Children. Because that's actually what the masses of Americans, white Americans specifically, are living. The comparison that Miss Mohogany Pink and others like her and her ilk make to demean, belittle, insult black men just speaks to the fact that they actually don't know or don't care what's actually happening in America and happening in the West. You're dealing with uber wealthy people hoarding the wealth at the top. You're dealing with class stagnation, wealth calcification at the top. And yet Miss Mohogany Pink thinks it's okay to insult, belittle, and demean black men by comparing black men to the groups of people that are hoarding all of the wealth at the top. In the environment where the median household income is not even $70,000, Miss Mohogany Pink thinks that she can insult and belittle black men. In an environment where only 8% of Americans have a net worth of $1 million or above, Miss Mohogany Pink thinks she can insult, belittle, demean black men. In the environment where half of American men make $38,000 a year or less, Miss Mohogany Pink thinks that she can berate, belittle, insult, demean black men. Where when young people, millennials and younger, so from age 40 and younger, when they're polled and asked, why are so many of you not getting married? The first thing out their mouth is money. Why are so many of you not purchasing homes? Money. Not just black people, mind you. And it's in that environment where Miss Mohogany Pink that she thinks she can insult, belittle, demean black men. What we know from the Washington Journal is that 60% of 2021, in 2021, 60% of college enrollees were women, 40% were men. That number is slated to escalate to 66% women, 33% men within the next decade or so. And the people that are driving the decrease in men enrollment in college are primarily white men as a percentage. Not only that, men are more likely to drop out of college than women are. So even though it's a 60-40 split for college enrollees, by the time you actually get to graduation, that number is more likely closer to 65-35. But that is not how Miss Mohogany Pink is speaking, because Miss Mohogany Pink does not care. And her followers and subscribers do not care. But unfortunately for them, the numbers and the statistics, they're going to run right into them out in the real world off the internet, off of social media, which is really, really radicalizing many people. This internet space and people huddling in their echo chambers are radicalizing people to the point where they sound this delusional about other black people. Miss Mohogany Pink would have you believe that the reason why only 4% of all adult black women are married outside of the black race is because black women are too loyal to black men. So said differently, Loving versus Virginia, the landmark decision that allowed for interracial marriage in America, was decided in 1967. So for over 50 years, we have 4% of all adult black women being married outside of the race. And Miss Mohogany Pink would like you to think it's not that these non-black men are racist as hell. It doesn't have anything to do with the history of these non-black men. This has nothing to do with Jim Crow or slavery or honestly just not finding black women interesting or not being interested in black women. No, the problem is that black women are too loyal to black men. That's the problem. So for over 50 years of legal access to black women, the reason why these non-black men aren't marrying black women is because black women are too loyal to black men. That's what Miss Mohogany Pink would have you believe. So let's think about that as we have these conversations. Let's think about that as people like Miss Mohogany Pink insult and demean black men and accuse black men of not being providers and protectors enough. Meanwhile, once again, half of American men make $38,000 a year or less. Something like 1/3 of American men make 50 or more. It's in that environment where Miss Mohogany Pink is insulting, belittling, and demeaning black men. These are the people that black people share a community with. People this delusional, people this incensed about black men that they're reimagining all of American history to make black men into the monsters and the boogeymen of the black community. Talking about the false promise of black love. Meanwhile, non-black men aren't showing up to marry all of these black women that are supposedly too loyal to black men. Black women outpace black men in the education field, in corporate America, and yet all of these non-black men who have this access to black women, who are in the same spaces as black women in college and university, who are in the same spaces as black women all throughout the corporate field, are not marrying black women in any significant number. And yet Miss Mohogany Pink is talking about the false promise of black love. Meanwhile, marriage in America is at a 150-year low. The child birth rate is falling off a cliff in America. Yes, including in the black community. This is the insanity that many black people engage in and then never actually peek their head out of that little cipher, that little circle of echo, that little echo chamber that they have. Because when they peek their head outside of that echo chamber, reality hits, and it hits hard. And in this environment, Miss Mohogany Pink thinks she can insult, belittle, demean black men. So I'll pause right there. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. There was no point in overly belaboring this point. But we have to be careful. These are our sisters, our mothers, our aunts, our nieces, maybe even our girlfriends and our wives speaking like this about black men. With no data on their side, really, no history on their side. We're acting like The Color Purple and Waiting to Excel were documentaries, not just movies. And so I'll end it right there. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments.